Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Today we're working on this little Ryobi blower. Now, it's been sitting for a while. The gentleman I got it from had two blowers, and when this one didn't start on the first pull, he stopped using it. So it just sat and sat and sat. So we're going to go ahead and get her running. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the fuel lines and replace the carburetor. Now, I tell you all the time, just buy the kit. Now, I could have rebuilt this one pretty easy, and I will save the carburetor and rebuild it and use it for another place. But buying the kit for a homeowner is the easy way to go. Let's take a look at the kit you get with this. Now, depending on where you live, a blower like this will cost you anywhere between $180 and $250 in the store. And this little kit that I bought cost $19.99. And the kit includes the carburetor, the adjustment tool, the gaskets, the filter, fuel lines, spark plugs, everything you could need to get this thing back to good shape. And it even includes the fuel pulling tool. Now, those of you that watch videos all the time know that I always use this to pull the fuel lines through. You can see this one's a little old and a little bent up, but it is this same tool. Oops. The only difference between this one and mine is if you look closely, let me set them next to each other. You can see mine has a pointy little edge, and this one's just rounded off. This is how I got mine, and I used a grinding wheel to make this real sharp and pointy, because that way it hooks into the fuel line a lot easier. This just won't hook into the fuel line. It's just hard work. So if you get one of these, sharpen this down to a point. But anyway, as I said, this whole kit costs 20 bucks and is exactly what you need. This one's got the carb on the other side, so we're going to put the camera at a different angle than we usually do. Let's scoot you around here. There we go. And I'm going to work a little bit left-handed for me. Can you see what I'm doing? You can see what I'm doing. Let's grab our handy screw gun, pop the air cleaner off, and see what we've got. Now we've got an invisible air filter. I hate it when that happens. So let's go ahead and take the carburetor off. Now notice we're not touching the fuel lines. Before you open the fuel lines, you want to vent the gas tank, or it'll spill gas everywhere when you do that. So we'll pull this off, we'll put it to the side. He's going to come back pretty quick. This is a nice quick little job. Disconnect the fuel, or the accelerator. And we're going to open this, and if there's any gas in it, we're going to go ahead and drain it. There's just the tiniest little bit in the bottom. We can work with that. So now we're going to cut the fuel lines. And we're going to pull the old ones out. If you got long pointy pliers, that's really helpful. Okay, there's our vent. And I'm working kind of blind here. There you go. If you look at our old fuel line, it's a mess. That's what ethanol will do to you. So now we're going to put our new fuel line in. And this is so easy, it's not even funny. Now if we're going to cut a good taper on it, that wasn't a very good taper. That's a little bit better. Let's try that. We're going to take mine with the pointy end. What we'll do is we'll go here. I usually like to do the one that's farthest away from the gas tank first, from the gas cap, because that way this fuel line looks awful big that came with it. So you can see with our pointy end, we can just stab it through our little taper that we just created. And it should lead it through the hole. See, and now we've got it sticking up just a little bit there. Tell you what, let's turn this around the other way. I don't like the lighting we've got here. There you go. It gives you slightly better light to see. So now that it's through a little bit, we'll grab our pliers and pull it the rest of the way through. Now here's one of the neat little tricks you want to keep in mind. Put your fuel filter on now. You see this tank's got a deep spot right here. So we want our filter to lay in the tank right here in that deep spot. So now we pull it through. I'm going to push our fuel in, and I'll take a look at her and see how she lays inside the tank. Yep, she's a little bit long. Pull her up a little bit. That's money. That's just perfect. Okay, now I've got her laying sideways right here in the bottom of the tank. So now we're going to cut this a little bit long. You say a little bit long because you can see it sits right here. So that's plenty. Now we're going to taper the second one. Put the same taper on it and run our little wire through. Now I'm not going to use the same end we did before. I'm going to use the new one that we just cut. Now the reason for that is the fatigue in the plastic. Now this one's going to be a shorter one because this is just nothing more than an air vent. When you're priming the carburetor, the gas comes up through this and then goes back through this vent until the carburetor is full of gas. Now, every now and again when you do this, the line will break on you while you're doing it. Like this will pull off. Don't let that bother you. Now I'll cut this about here and pull it up and through and pull it up and through. And this only has to be inside the tank. Doesn't have to be inside the fuel by any means at all. And that's it. It's kind of tough. I'm working on this one left-handed. So now we're going to take our new carburetor and pay attention when you're doing this. You see this little hole here? That's pressure from the cylinder. It's negative pressure from the cylinder. It sort of goes pop, 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 and runs through this hole. And that's what makes the fuel pump. So you want to make sure you use the gasket that has the little hole that aligns with it, and make sure you don't put it on upside down. If you put it on upside down, it won't start and you won't know why. If you use the wrong gasket, this one, it'll cover that hole again. And that hole is where the positive and negative pressure fluctuation comes from on the engine. So just consider it your fuel pump. So we use this other gasket on the front of the carburetor, right here. Let me put you down for a second. We'll hold this gasket right where she's at. Then we'll get her all together. There you go. Double check, make sure our hole's open. Our hole's right there, so our hole's open. Okay. Put our accelerator back on. Reattach our linkage. And it's just that easy. And I really expect this thing to run just fine. Getting our alignments right. Now I'm kind of working left-handed because the carburetor's on the opposite side of where they normally are. This is what you might call a left-handed blower. Let me scoot you over here for this part. All we're doing is putting bolts on. And it lets me be right-handed again. Where you at, buddy? There we go. I use a screw gun to do this, but if you're doing it yourself, using a power tool is dangerous if you don't do it all the time, because you can just tear things up to no end. So we'll grab our new little air filter, which is part of the kit. Toss it in, clip it on. And the only thing we've got left is a couple of fuel lines, and we're done. Okay, so let's put our fuel lines on. We'll cut them down to length. Now, it might be easier for you to do the fuel lines before you put the air filter on, or even before you put the carburetor on. Remember, the one in this case closer to the primer bulb is the exit for the fuel. So you want to make sure you put that on your short line. It's usually the one closest to the, there we go. It's usually the one closest to the fuel, closest to the primer bulb. Now I do this quite a bit, so the fuel lines are easier. You know, like it with everything, practice makes perfect. There you go. Let's take a quick look down here, show you what we got. Notice our fuel lines are relatively straight and they're nice and organized, because the little extra work you spend making things organized now can save you a whole lot of grief later. Okay, now she's idling. I'm going to turn that out just a touch. Feels like she could use a little bit more gas at idle. Let's turn it out just a touch. Okay, she sounds pretty good. So I'm going to wait and restart her when she's cold, but let's start her now to make sure she starts when she's warm. Now I'm making adjustments on the high screw. I'm listening to how it revs up. I'd like it to rev up just a touch faster than that. There you go, that's a little bit better. Okay, that's about it. She's in pretty good shape now. So I know I've said this before, but I've got to say it again. Order the kit that's got all the parts, because it'll give you everything you need to put it back together and get her running nicely. Now this one was a little bit tricky getting the carburetor running, so I had to adjust it just a little. But 99% of the time, when you put the carb on, it'll at least start and idle okay. And so you're just tweaking just a little bit to get it idle just right. And what you look for is the highest idle point, and then you back it down just the tiniest little bit. So adjust the idle screw, the low screw, which is towards the motor. Adjust it down until it gets the very highest idle, and then back it out the tiniest little bit, like 64th of a turn. Just on a clock, back it out 2 seconds. So, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.